Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Committee. My name is Councillor Jordan Bowden and I'm the chair of this Licensing Committee. Can I remind everyone today that this meeting is being live streamed on the City's YouTube channel and the public can observe the meeting without needing to be present. Could members and officers now introduce themselves? Please mute your microphone once you have done so. So I'll start to my left.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning everyone. My name is Nicole Walker and I'm the Deputy City Solicitor and I'm advising the committee today.
Hello everyone, I'm Councillor Lisa Martin from Roundhay ward.
Morning everyone, Councillor Sharon Hamilton, Meanwood and Moortown ward.
Good morning folks, I'm Councillor Adrian McCluskey from Farnley and Wortley ward.
Morning everyone, Councillor Tom Hinchcliffe, Bramley and Stanningley.
Good morning everyone, Councillor Oliver Edwards representing Guiseley and Rawdon.
Good morning everybody, Councillor Asghar Ali representing Kipton and Hare Hills.
Morning everyone, Victoria Radford, Entertainment Licensing. Thank you.
Good morning everybody, Jason Singh. I'm the Head of Regulatory Services covering taxi licensing and entertainment licensing.
Good morning everybody, Sue Duckworth from Entertainment Licensing.
Morning everyone, I'm Jo Rowlands, Head of Financial Inclusion.
Good morning, Councillor Matt Rogan, Beeston and Holbeck ward.
It's me.
Is it you again?
It is me again. Thank you. Sorry.
David Dresser, Killybeck and Seacroft.
Good morning, Councillor Neil Buckley, All Woodley ward.
Morning, Councillor Rick Downs, Otley and Eden ward.
Good morning, I'm Helen Gray, the clerk to the committee.
I'll just prompt you again, Councillor Siri.
Good morning, Councillor Dawn Siri, Pudsey ward.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Helen to introduce the first items on the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. Under Agenda Item 1, there are no appeals against refusal of inspection of documents. Agenda Item 2, under Item 8, the Victoria Gate Casino, members will be in receipt of a private pack of the agenda papers. There are exempt appendices in that report which have been exempt under the Access to Information Procedure Rules 10.43 because it relates to financial or business affairs of a particular person or organisation. So I would ask that if members do have questions about the papers that are coloured pink in this agenda pack, that you indicate so and we'll reserve those for a private session should the committee need to go into private session. Agenda Item 8, late items. There's no formal late items of business, but members are in receipt of a supplementary pack in relation to Item 7, the Baby Cinema Clubs, which is the EDCI screening document. And also, just to alert you to the fact I've tabled some paperwork this morning that relates back to the meeting that was held in May, so we'll refer to that paperwork under the minutes today. Under Agenda Item number 4, could I ask members to declare any interests that they may have? Can't see any indicated, so thank you. Item number 5, apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Pogson Golden, and I understand that Councillor Carlisle will be attending but is a little bit late this morning. Thank you.
Okay, so I think if I referring to the minutes, am I right in thinking Jason you will be speaking on this? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So subject to any other further comments on the minutes that members may have, I'd just like to bring to the committee's attention.
So, could you just please bring your microphone a bit closer to you, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Subject to any further comments on the minutes that members may have on any other items, under Item 11, that was considered on the 22nd of May, which was review of licensing conditions for taxi and private hire vehicles and drivers. It was brought to our attention after the meeting that there was a typographical error in the report, which I'd now like to alert members to. It's not a substantive error, it doesn't change the substance of the decision, but there was an "or" missing, and that was paragraph 1, 8, where we discuss widening the range of wheelchair accessible vehicles, and it's highlighted in the paper that's just been circulated, just for your reference and ease. So you can see there that the word "or," so to be approved, a wheelchair accessible vehicle. As a wheelchair accessible vehicle, the vehicle must be Stage 2 converted and or show category M1. So the or was missing. We've reinserted that in the consultation that is now live. So it's just to bring that to your attention. It's a minor point, but I think for accuracy, you need to be aware.
Okay, do member accept these minutes as true and correct record? Yeah. Thank you. Agenda item number 7, baby cinema clubs, admission of infants to restricted parent and infant screenings. Could I invite officers from entertainment licensing to present this report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, members. So this report brings back to committee the issue of baby cinema clubs, screenings, and asks members to determine the most appropriate regulatory approach for Leeds. As members will recall, the central issue is whether infants under 12 months who are legally children under the Licensing Act 2003 should be permitted to attend films classified 15 and 18 in controlled parent and infant screenings, and if so, under what conditions. The report doesn't seek to promote or discourage attendance at these screenings. The role of the licensing authority is to ensure that any approach adopted is lawful, proportionate and consistent with the licensing objectives, in particular the protection of children from harm. Since the matter was last considered, further work has been undertaken to strengthen the evidence base available to members. So this has included engagement with the DCMS, the BBFC, which is British Board of Film Classification, Public Health, Children and Family Services and other local authorities and operators, as well as commissioning independent clinical advice from Beacon House, who are a specialist trauma centre. So it's important to acknowledge at the outset that the published evidence base in this area still remains limited. There's no definitive research demonstrating harm or no harm from infant attendance in cinema screenings, and that's what Public Health has advised us. As a result, the decision before members necessarily involves an element of professional judgment informed by the available evidence and the licensing objectives. The Beacon House advice is particularly relevant to the committee's request to consider both safeguarding and maternal well-being. The advice emphasises that infants can respond physiologically to sensory stimuli such as sudden loud sounds or distressing audio, even without understanding the content. It also highlights the importance of the caregiver in regulating the infant's experience and the potential impact where that caregiver is distressed or distracted by the film content. But at the same time, the advice is clear: the baby cinema clubs can provide meaningful benefits for caregivers. These screenings offer opportunities for social connection, reduce isolation and support well-being and identity during the postnatal period. For many new parents, they represent one of the few accessible ways to engage in social and cultural activity without being separated from their infant. Members specifically asked that these maternal and caregiver benefits be properly considered alongside safeguarding and that a balanced position is reflected throughout the report. The key point arising from the clinical evidence is that the risk is not uniform. Not all films present the same level of potential impact, and not all infants or caregivers will experience the environment in the same way. As a result, a nuanced and proportionate approach may be more appropriate than a blanket position in either direction. So we looked at whether we could perhaps permit 15 rated movies and not permit 18 rated movies and have that as an option, but it was felt that actually the noise and the light and the experience in a 15 can be just as distracting as that in an 18, and certainly, especially if you think about the caregiver's reaction to a psychological drama, a psychological thriller might be more extreme than a baby and caregiver's reaction to a horror movie, for example. So the report presents 3 options for members to consider. Option 1 would be to maintain the current position, restricting attendance to films up to a maximum classification of a 12A. That's been our stance in Leeds for many years. This is the most risk-averse and straightforward approach, but doesn't take into consideration that some films that are classified at a 15 are actually perfectly acceptable. For example, the one that caused all the correspondence last year was the Bridget Jones film. Option 2 would allow a controlled and conditional approach using the existing legal framework to permit infants under 12 months to attend 15 and 18 rated movies within defined baby cinema club screenings, subject to strict safeguards that we can put in place. And option 3 would involve local reclassification of films, which is legally possible, but operationally complex and resource intensive. So members are not being asked to determine individual films, but rather to decide the overall framework that should apply in Leeds. If members are minded to adopt option 2, the report sets out a suite of potential safeguards, and they include environmental controls such as reduced sound levels and raised lighting, a film-by-film risk assessment, clear content advisories to support informed parental choice, and the provision for easy exit and re-entry during screenings. Those conditions, we've taken the conditions that have already been adopted by Chelmsford Council and also the recommendations from the Beacon House report and adapted those conditions accordingly. We need to say that if you adopt option 2 and cinemas want to do baby screenings of 15 and 18 rated movies, they will need to apply for a minor variation in order to have those conditions applied to their licence, which will allow baby cinema screenings. When that happens, we will deal with each application on a case-by-case basis. So they may not get all the conditions that we are recommending as part of their minor variation. They may not be able to provide all of that, but it would be a case for us to consider whether that is appropriate, whether the conditions they don't want to have us apply are appropriate and safe. And if there's any question, then we would bring it to a licensing subcommittee hearing. So should committee determine option 2 is the preferred approach, officers will develop detailed operational guidance for cinema operators. It will include clear expectations and supporting documentation and an example risk assessment framework to ensure consistency, transparency and effective compliance across the city. So in summary, members are asked to consider how best to balance two important factors: the licensing authority's duty to protect children from harm and the recognised well-being and social benefits that these screenings can provide for parents and caregivers, and to determine which of the options presented represents the most appropriate and proportional defensible approach for Leeds. Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Sue. Just a couple of comments before we go on to questions. So we'll break it down into two sections: questions for officers, and then if you have any overall comments or maybe the stance that you might have, we'll do that in the second section. So first section will be direct questions to our officers. But I will just say I think there is a really important part at the bottom of page 19, which is members are reminded that the licensing authority has a statutory duty to regulate environments that may present risks. This role is focused on managing and mitigating them, not endorsing or approving the underlying activity. And I think that's a really important distinction that we need to make as a regulatory body. I have to just say an absolute massive thank you to the entertainment licensing team. This came to us last year, and obviously many of us did not have the expertise to be able to make that decision at that time. We asked to defer it, and I think this is an absolutely fantastic report that's been presented today. And I think the underlying idea that other cities are watching us and what we might be doing today just indicates how brilliant the work has been. So thank you very much. So if there are any questions. Councillor McCluskey.
Clearly, I'd like to make decisions based on evidence, and we have a distinct lack of evidence, or minimal evidence, shall we say. Has there been any work done with Chelmsford in terms of feedback of how their system is operating, or have they come across risks, complaints, incidents? Thank you.
No. We have spoken to Chelmsford at some length, and it was on the basis of their approach is what we're suggesting here. As far as I'm aware, the operators are happy with the approach that Chelmsford have come up with, and therefore they are now showing 15 and 18 rated movies on a risk-based approach as they're at their baby cinema clubs, and there's been no further problems. Our conditions do go further because we have the benefit of the Beacon House report. So ours are slightly more detailed than the Chelmsford conditions, so I don't know if that will create us a problem in the future.
Councillor Siri.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask why we didn't adopt the conditional approach ourselves, seeing as it always appears to be in legislation already? Why have we initially refused and then come to this conclusion that we can use this option in law?
Our view and that of the advice that we were given is that the age classification in films is very clear. If you are under the age of 15, you cannot view a 15-rated movie, and it's similar for an 18-rated movie. So our stance and needs has always been only infants can only view up to a 12A. And for us, the age classification was very clear. It wasn't ambiguous. It was written there in the legislation. It's only since we've been doing this work and we've received advice from the British Board of Film Classification and the Department of Culture, Media and Sport that we had this opportunity presented to us as an option. So for us, up until we did this work, we didn't realise that it was. We didn't appreciate that we could apply these conditions in this way.
Sorry, just a quick question as well. How much does a variation cost?
So a minor variation is £89, takes 15 days, and it's a decision that we make that the variation is so minor that it's not going to impact on the licensing objectives. If there's any concern that say they want to fiddle around with the conditions or whatever, and we feel that this is something that is going to impact on the objectives of protection of children from harm, then we would ask them to apply for a full variation, and that would then come to licensing members for a decision.
Councillor Dresser.
I was just wondering, how much did this report by Shoshone Alliance cost?
It was £2,000.
Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Thank you very much for such a clear report. Quick question, what discussions have we had with operators about the impact that the current blanket has on their operation and what cost it is to them?
So for them, very much it's a matter of revenue. They obviously can they get more attendance at 15 and 18 rated movies, and they get a lot of complaints. For example, the Bridget Jones movie, which was rated a 15 because of swearing and references to sex, they got an awful lot of complaints from mums who wanted to go and see Bridget Jones and wanted to take their babies with them. And as I say, at the time we said you couldn't do it because you can't take a baby into a 15-rated movie. So they welcome this approach. They would like to have more flexibility in the films that they can show.
Councillor Carlisle.
Just sorry if it's in here, but are we in a position where we could say 15s are okay, but not 18s, and then maybe other conditions as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we've said in the conditions is that we would want every film, regardless of its age classification, to be risk assessed. Now, for somebody like Everyman, they could do that nationally. So it wouldn't have to be that every cinema manager has to pre-watch a film and write that risk assessment. It could be done for the whole country. But we felt that was more appropriate than, say, not permitting an 18-rated movie, because, as I say, a 15-rated movie may be more distressing to the caregiver and the infant than an 18-rated movie. So it was more nuanced than just straight age verification.
Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Chair. So, I mean, a lot of questions of emphasise the wrong cost of this report. I want to ask a simple question, that does this report then bring us up to date as a city with what's been asked, and is it more safer and is it a better and informed decision now than it was when the report started or the investigation in this started, please? Forget about the costs.
I think it's certainly a more pragmatic approach than the one that we had before, and it's certainly more acceptable to both mothers and cinemas. I think the issue that we had before is that we were being asked to say that 15 and 18 rated movies are not harmful to children under the age of 12 months. And that was most certainly the view of the parents who were telling us the baby knows nothing and doesn't understand what they're looking at. And that is very much why we felt that we needed that clinical specialist opinion, because we are not child psychologists and we don't have that deep knowledge. And I think what's interesting that's come out of the Beacon House report is that she emphasises the effect that the film might have on the caregiver and the ability then of the caregiver to then meet the needs of the infant rather than the direct impact on the infant. So I think we are in a much better, more knowledgeable position than we were 2 years ago when we first started considering this. We are being seen as a leader in this, and I think a lot of authorities are waiting to hear what we do before they make their own decisions. So you get, across the country, you get a mix of approaches to this. Some authorities have said nothing over a 12A, others are not enforcing age verification.
So Sue, my gathering is there isn't a standardised approach across the country, but this report is extremely robust in its approach. So I, as a licensing member, would thank you and your department for actually going out and doing this for the city. How many of other cities have approached us regarding this report prior to this, or is there any interest so far that they've been looking at this report?
Certainly we've had interest from the larger metropolitan councils such as Manchester, Birmingham, York, and the smaller authorities, I think, struggle because really it's only the larger cities that are putting on baby cinema clubs and are enforcing it. So yes, we have got quite a few authorities that are waiting to see what we do.
Sue, just regarding sort of the idea that we're able to now, I guess, effectively regulate, the sort of environmental requests that we would be asking, am I right in thinking these weren't in place when they were doing the 12A filming? So as a sort of regulatory body, there's almost like a net benefit at the moment because these screenings were happening under 12A, but actually, from what we've had from expert advice, the actual sound levels and the environmental of the cinema might have been maybe more distressing than what might have actually been on the film for 12A. So can I just get clarification on that, please?
So we've not been able to, or we've not regulated a restriction on lighting or sound because that's not been something that's been within our realm of experience before now. I am aware that for baby cinema clubs and also for special dementia screenings and for neurodivergent screenings, they generally do bring the house lights up and turn the volume down. So the cinemas are already themselves adapting their screenings appropriately. I think this just puts it in black and white for them and gives them actual defined levels.
Yeah, I think that definition is really important. Councillor Hamilton.
I just wanted to say that when it came the first time and we were adamant we needed more research and more information because the parents and everybody was saying that 18 was okay. So, I mean, we had a good discussion and asked for it to go away and come back, and I'm pleased that we did that. It don't matter how long it took, That's what we asked for, and that's what we've received, and then we can make a decision now with regard to option 1, 2 and 3. And so I'm really pleased. I'm still a bit surprised, though, that families and children didn't make any recommendation or say anything. You know, they are here for children. You know, they could at least get someone to look into it on behalf of the council. I'm really disappointed with family and children with regards to that. But yeah, I was happy, and we had a long discussion that we're going to say no at that time until we get this information, and it's here now and we can make a decision. And because I was really concerned about being babies under 12, but the experts knows best or think they know best. But yeah, I'm happy and pleased with that. It don't matter how long it take or how much it took. We need to make the right decision with the advice and any evidence that we receive.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hamilton. We're just going to go into have you got a question, or is it a comment?
Yes, question.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Dresser.
Yeah, so the recommendation is that the committee goes option 2, and I've looked at option 2. How is option 2 going to be administered? Because it seems to be a lot of issues of how, you know, ifs and buts, compared to obviously option 1, which is the status quo.
Are you asking how it would be enforced? Because it would be, we'd administrate it.
How are you going to administer it?
So it would be put in, those conditions would be put in place by way of minor variation, or a full variation if they wanted to adjust the conditions in any way. We would enforce it as we do with all our enforcement. It's generally on a complaint based. So we would investigate if we received a complaint.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for this report as well. I've just joined this committee, so I didn't see the previous report, but it makes a very interesting reading. In terms of, I had a question about the risk assessments that would be conducted. Am I correct in understanding that these would be conducted by the venues themselves? Okay. And where would those be kept, and what would be the plan in terms of monitoring them? So in terms of the frequency of monitoring them, who would monitor them? Because I think that will be important, especially if it's a new system.
I expect our enforcement team would take specific interest while we're bedding in the new system. The risk assessment would be done by the operator. We wouldn't have access to screeners, and we wouldn't feel comfortable doing that as a licensing authority, so we would want the operator to do that. Those risk assessments would be kept at the premises, and they would be available for inspection. I think going forward in the long term, what would happen is that we would ensure that the conditions are being complied with through some routine inspections, and then anything else would be dealt with following on a complaint-based approach. If we received a complaint, say for example from a parent who attended a screening and felt that it wasn't suitable, then we would do a full investigation. We'd want to speak to the manager, we'd want to speak to the staff, look at the risk assessment, even perhaps ask for a screener of the movie so that we could judge appropriately, and then enforcement action would be taken, you know, as we usually do through a stepped approach.
Councillor McCluskey.
Just in terms of risk, how much onus is put on the parents in terms of to assess what's appropriate, what's not appropriate?
So part of these conditions require, and this is in addition to the Chelmsford conditions, we've asked for content advisory information to be provided at point of sale, and at so when on the website when people buy a ticket online, or at the point of sale in the cinema, but also to be on a screen as they enter the auditorium, so that they are completely aware of what they're walking into, because that's really important for informed parental consent. We want the parent to be making the decision here. We want the operator to make the decision as to whether the film is suitable, and then we want the parent to make sure that the film is suitable for them and their child.
Okay, if there's no further questions for officers, we'll go into any comments that members might have, which would be fine if you want to make any comments regarding the three options as well that are for us at the moment. So, Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I had so many women writing. I know that so many women, including those many from Roundhay, writing into the previous chair of licensing. I think that Councillor Gibson said that it was the most letters that the most correspondence that he'd ever received as chair of licensing on this subject, and it was all from women who were expressing their frustration about not being able to see normal films and be part of normal cultural life, and the impact that was having on their mental health, and the isolation caused by when you first have a baby, your life's turned upside down, and you know, even if you're not diagnosed as having postnatal depression, you just don't know which way is up initially, and it's so important to get out and be amongst other parents as well. So I absolutely I'm really pleased with the work that's been done by Leeds, because I know that women in this city are looking at this decision, and I guess women across the country, if so many other authorities are watching what we do. So, you know, I'm speaking alongside Councillor Hamilton, strongly in favour of option 2. I think it's great. It's just going to be much better. And I have attended a baby cinema, not when my daughter was young, but more recently, just with my mum, because there happened to be subtitles on, and you know, it's Hamlet, and it's such a lovely experience, and different from normal cinema. So yes, lovely, brilliant, thank you. So yes, in favour of option 2, thanks.
Thank you for the comments, Councillor Martin. I welcome Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Chair. Sue Duckworth mentioned it a few minutes ago, and she said we are not child psychologists, and indeed we're not. And I've searched this report, and I may be wrong, but I haven't found the phrase parental responsibility in there at all. And it seems to me that here we are, 20 people discussing 15 or 18 or this or that. It should be down to the parents' responsibility. Because it seems to me, I'm not an expert on babies, but it seems to me that a baby's problem with this kind of thing would be the noise, not the content. A baby in arms cannot possibly look at a screen from however many yards away it is and decide what's happening. It's ridiculous to think that. So it's simply the noise. And so I just think, I'm not sure which of these options is better, but there shouldn't be any options. It should be down to the parents.
Can I bring in Councillor Hinchcliffe?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to come back on a few points that have already been made and to add my comments. I think it's clear from the report that, you know, the work that's been done by the council already actually found that these options were available to us with the DCMS. So that's welcome, and it's actually led to the debate we're having today. Obviously, I've been on this committee for 3 years, and I know previous members have raised concerns and the benefits of these baby cinema clubs, and I think it's all worthwhile to discuss it. Given the potential harm, we're discussing today the potential harm to infants, so I don't think it's appropriate to put any sort of acceptable price on research that might be done to that end, and I'm actually grateful to Dr Lyons and Entertainment Licensing for their work. Councillor Buckley referenced noise and that we're not child psychologists. You're right, Dr Lyons is, and they've done the research, so I'd read that with interest. And if noise is your main concern, then option 2 would be your choice, given you can apply that condition. In previous years, other members of this committee have rightly raised everything that Councillor Martin said, and Councillor Martin's comments are very welcome, and I think she's absolutely right. And given the Chair's excellent question earlier on about applying conditions that may not have existed in the past, I do think that that's why we should all be supporting option 2 today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hinchcliffe. I welcome Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. I would also support option 2. I think it will be work in progress, but I also think that there are that different points have been considered. We've also got a report that's been put together by people who are specialists and who have more specialist knowledge than myself. I think there is an element of personal responsibility. I find myself in agreement with Councillor Buckley on this. I think there is an element of personal responsibility that that parents and adults have. I think that there also need to be safeguards in terms of making sure that the risk assessments have been done. I think there was a point about the importance of plain English. I think that's important, considering that these films could be shown in a variety of venues to a variety of audiences. So I think with those safeguards, I support it. I would agree with Councillor Martin's observations. I would add as well that I think there are quite a lot of younger dads, and maybe not so younger dads, who would also welcome the opportunity, and also grandparents as well. And I think that point about providing opportunities for new parents and also for grandparents to mix is really important. And whilst I recognise that there could be, that there will always be some level of risk, I think that the benefits in terms of socialisation and the benefits of bringing people together and supporting people through what's often quite a rough and rocky time outweigh the potential risks. So I'll be supporting option 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Downs.
Thanks, Chair. I find it interesting that we don't have sort of a national policy on this, and so therefore it's down to local councils to make their decisions, which then almost smacks of a postcode lottery for parents as to which authority permits and which doesn't. And I think that it would be useful in time that there is a national policy on this. I think the classification of films is a bit of a misnomer here, and I think we sort of touched on it. It doesn't really matter whether the films are a 12, a 15, an 18 for somebody that's under the age of 12 months. They have no concept of what that film is about. They won't be watching it as a film. They probably won't be watching it. So the two elements that I see that are critical is, one is the noise levels, because that could be distressing in a way. The other is the emotions of the carer or the parent, because if I've got grandchildren and I've got 8 grandsons, and I can tell from holding them, nurturing them when they've been very young, how they respond to people. Now I find that I'm almost known as a child whisperer, because I can hold a baby and they will fall asleep on me, because I'm so relaxed when I'm holding them and they can feel those vibes. Whereas other people can pick them up and they might be a bit stressed about it, and the baby picks up on that stress. So the key issue here is the stress levels of the person that's with them. And you can't really put that into a classification. You almost need a separate classification, either loud film, emotional film. We don't have that. So that is where option 2 comes in, with the assessment done by the screener. And they should be, I think we should put guidance in there to say that when assessing it, you should consider the emotional impact and that emotional impact on the young child. I'm no child expert, but from personal experience, that is what I have found. And there is an element, as Councillor Buckley says, of parental responsibility. And if you know that you're highly emotional and you can be affected by a film, then it's probably best not to take a young person to that, a baby to that film. So I think they're the key things from my point of view. And I think that option 2 is a fair way of going forward. And I'd like to think of us as a major city with a responsibility, and from the correspondence that the previous chair received from a number of people that want this, because it is in legislation, we can do it. I think there's enough evidence to support that we should do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Downs. Councillor Carlyle.
Thank you to the team and thank you to the researchers, because this is valuable, and it's good that Leeds is somewhat taking a lead on this. Clearly these are really valuable events for a load of people, so we should certainly, as others have said, take that on board. Personally, my sense is that whilst taking on board everything that everyone said, within the report, 18 classification films do come in for special mention, over and above 15s, and my sense would be that whilst you're right, 15 films are indeed 12s or less, might be very noisy, might create distress. If you think about it, 18 films are more likely to be, I think, distressing for the caregiver, and I don't know at what point, whether it's 6 months or 9 months, the child starts to process perhaps what is going on around them, or starting to maybe not understand the content of the film, but at least start to, engage with the content of it. My preference would be that if we were to allow 15 films, that would still give a lot of films, a wide range of films, without going for 18. So I don't want to. I think there's maybe taking quite kind of a big risk with the psychology of kids in ways that we don't yet understand. I'd certainly echo this idea of, this is something we talked about last year, about wanting to make sure there's really good quality information to equip and empower parents to make decision making. There was something that we talked about, I think, at the committee a few months ago, which would be maybe encouraging parents as well to provide their kids with earmuffs. You see that when parents go to noisy kind of gig events. Again, I'm not, wouldn't specify it, but I think encourage them. I kind of wonder to what extent we are building in review, or whether we just go for this and then just assume that it's going to be good forever, or whether we give ourselves 24 months or something and aim to review it after that. I'd certainly echo the wanting to put as much onus as possible on providers as opposed to on you or your team. I certainly thought a lot of the additional recommendations in the report around lighting, dynamic range compressors, psycho-educational info is kind of lots and lots of good stuff. And I suppose just finally, going back to Councillor Buckley's point about wanting to just give the parent full rein. I suppose the problem with that is that you could have a situation where parents take their kids, older kids, to the cinema and say, "Oh yeah, little Billy's all right with 18 films. Like, it's my decision. I'm the parent." And so I think the idea of, I think sometimes maybe we're so afraid of the whole idea of nanny state that actually we kind of absolve ourselves of responsibility, which is not what we're trying to do here. But that would be one concern about just giving parents absolute free rein, hence my idea of my proposal around 15s. And finally, I would like to nominate Councillor Downs as just our baby cinema czar, to just go around and just comfort crying infants in all corners of the city. Yes, great.
I welcome Councillor Dresser. Councillor McCluskey.
I think when we're looking at the options, if we look at present, a parent or caregiver can bring a child into a 12A with no sound restrictions, no light restrictions. And used to say something like Toy Story doesn't have a lot of bangs and crashes and wallops and bright lights, but not when it's a 15 or 18 at the minute. So it seems to make sense to me that these conditions. I take on Councillor Downs, I think, about the emotional content. And that does, a baby does feel that, knows exactly what's going on. So, but that's where the assessment of whether I should be taking my child to this film comes in, back to the parental responsibility. So I'm quite in favour of option 2. Thank you.
Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Chair. Sue, there's been a lot of discussions. We are child-friendly Leeds, and I would like to thank all the members sat around this table that we've actually brought this to this point here, and we've had a discussion on it. Some of the things that I've listened with, everybody mentioned here, the comments. I'm glad that we've taken a step from the professionals regarding children, and also not every parent can make an informed decision. So these decisions are made on, some of you have talked about whether it's a national policy or there is a standardization. Well, this is what we've just done today. We could lead the way and others could follow, and this is because we have challenged something that has gone on unchallenged nationally for the last 10, 20, 15 years. So Sue, please take this back to the team and thank them on our behalf, especially on my behalf, please, and thank you for the work you've done, and I will be supporting option 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. I bring in Councillor Rawdon.
Thank you very much. And so obviously first time seeing all of this as one of the newer members of the committee, similar to Councillor Edwards. So first of all, thank you very much for all the work that you've done putting together the report from Beacon House, the evidence. It's incredibly thorough, it's incredibly robust, and sort of coming into this and reading it for the first time, it's good to see that there's so much information at our whim to basically make a good informed decision about this. Now, I think the major concern around this is obviously that the evidence base is very thin. We don't know what's going to happen long term, and I think it's incredibly nuanced, because a bit like Councillor Down said, you almost need to reclassify, is it emotional, is it this, that, the other. But I think of the evidence that there is, including the Chelmsford case study, what they've done already, and what's been said about safeguards being clearly outlined in a case-by-case approach, I think, it is pretty robust, and I think that this is a really good opportunity to have that opportunity. I can't get my words out this morning. It's a really good opportunity for people going to these screenings to have that interaction with other parents. Absolutely. Now, yes, I think there are concerns about the noise, as Councillor Buckley said, but I think one of the things that the report highlights is that transitive reaction from caregivers, and I know that it's in the report, it says there are plain term advisories about what's in the film. I think that strengthens those safeguards as well as the sort of case by case decision about a film. So I think that in itself enables parental responsibility, because if a parent knows how they're going to react, knowing that there's a certain theme in the film or it's got a certain trigger warning around it, I think that's a really, like I say, robust. In which case, I am very supportive of option 2, and thank you very much for all the work that's been done on this.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor Rawdon. I will just add myself, I think with some of the comments, I think that there are things that have been addressed. So I think the idea of if this comes in with a minor variation, and this is, say, an everyman cinema, which is up and down the country, this is something that they can lead on nationally. I think specifically on paragraph 45, page 25. So just what Councillor Carlisle was saying, and I think it's really important that this would be enforceable conditions, so including environmental controls. We've all acknowledged, the difference is actually we could see a net benefit on the environment issue, because you could have a 12A, for instance, if it was something like the Avengers, which is actually really, really noisy. We know there couldn't be a difference maybe with a 15, that could be a romantic comedy or something along those lines, but we've seen now potentially a net benefit of all these cinema screenings. But it's the risk assessment is by the exhibitor, and clear information for parents and guardians to make the informed decisions on attending the screenings. I think that's incredibly important, and I think ultimately from the independent advice, the overall net benefit that this could be for a parent who needs to get out and socialise, there is a clear benefit to that baby with having a parent who is less stressed and, you know, more emotionally happy. And I think that's absolutely incredibly important. Speaking to legal advice, and it was something that Councillor Carlisle brought up, and I just would welcome any a response, Sue. If we were to do an 18-month review on this, and it seems like we might do option 2, would that be viable for entertainment licensing? It gives time for these minor variations to come in, and we can look at it. Would that be possible if we were to do option 2, which it seems the way that members will vote, but we do a review on that? How would that look practically for entertainment licensing?
We could include a section on the annual report, which comes to you in March, and we could discuss how many cinemas have taken up the option and any complaints that we've received, and any enforcement action that we've needed to take, if that would be suitable. And if it is concerning to members, then you can always ask us to bring a more detailed report back and for us to reconsider this situation.
Councillor Carlisle.
So, I mean, would it be possible to, again, to try to take the onus off you, could we get some researchers involved, maybe from the local universities, to try to help us to, like, you know, not immediately, but over 18 or 24 months, to help us, you know, if we are trying to kind of take a lead and pioneer this in the city, and if this will potentially shape national legislation, I suppose it'd be interesting to get some proper research rather than necessarily wait for complaints.
The problem with research is that it's not morally acceptable to research babies. So it would be really, really difficult. And this is the problem that we've had all the way down. It's really difficult to get research because nobody wants to do research on babies.
I think the suggestion that it comes back to the annual meeting and we can see if there's been any issues or obviously successes, I think that would be entirely viable. Okay, so we're going to go through the 3 options and then we'll vote on it. So can I show yeah. Could I have someone to put forward a motion on an option that we can vote on? And it's seconded? Okay, so can we do a show of hands for option 2, please? Okay, and that is passed. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 8, variation and novation of Schedule 9 agreement, Victoria Gate Casino, Leeds. Before we start, just a reminder to everyone that there may be some issues which the meeting may need to consider in a private session. If you do have any comment or query that should be dealt with in private, then please indicate that at an appropriate point. The committee can move into private session to consider those issues together. Could I invite officers to present this report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, guys, it's me again. Chair, members of the committee, thank you. This item relates to the Schedule 9 agreement for the Victoria Gate Casino and the steps now required to vary and then novate that agreement as part of the forthcoming sale of the business. As members will recall, the Schedule 9 agreement is not a standard contractual arrangement. It originates from the statutory 2-stage process under the Gambling Act 2005, through which Leeds was permitted to award one of a very limited number of large casino licences nationally. I think for anybody that wasn't around in 2007, 2009, this is going to sound really complicated, and I'll be honest, it was awful. But we had a situation where the government at the time wanted to control the number of casino licences. We had several hundred converted casino licences that moved over from the 1968 Gambling Act. And then they wanted to allow a certain amount of liberalisation of gambling, and so they put in place this process where we could, as a licensing authority, bid for the right to grant a licence, and it could either be a small casino, a large casino, or a regional casino. There were 8 small, 8 large, and 1 regional casino. Leeds was lucky, we bid for and we were allowed to grant a large casino licence, so we're one of 8 authorities. The regional casino was rather Manchester was successful in getting the regional casino. That was never implemented, it never went through regulation, and so the only new casinos were these 8 large and 8 small. We went through many years of meetings with the other authorities, with legal counsel and so on, to put together a process that would get the best benefits for the local authorities in which these casinos were going to be placed. As it turns out, very few of these casinos were opened. I think it's 3 large casinos. I don't think any of the small casinos actually opened in the end. We had a downturn in the economy. Lots of stuff happened between 2007 and 2026. And it meant that actually these large casinos are actually quite rare. As I say, I think there's one in Newham, one in Birmingham, I think, and then, or somewhere, and Leeds. Sorry, I'm being a bit vague. I have my head in Leeds. So all of this came from a statutory 2-stage process under the Gambling Act. We were allowed to award one of the very limited of large casino licences. And this process involved both a regulatory assessment and a competitive evaluation of the social and economic benefits offered by applicants. They were allowed to make a stage 1 application. We decided whether or not we were going to grant that, and then they were put in their best and final offers at stage 2, which was a whole procurement light type process, and we had a panel looking at those bids from across the council. So we had economic development, we had financial inclusion, we had procurement, we had licensing, we had all sorts of people involved in that process. The eventual decision as to whether or not to grant the licence came to licensing committee. Lucky guys. And so we granted the licence to Victoria Gate Casino, and they offered us a range of benefits, including a social inclusion fund, and these were all formalised into a Schedule 9 agreement. So the casino business is now due to transfer. So they're selling the business from VGC Leeds Limited to Mercer Casino Entertainment UK Limited, who, by the way, have one of the other large casinos. Because the Gambling Act requires a valid Schedule 9 agreement to be in place with the incoming operator, the agreement must be updated and then transferred in parallel with the premises licence. So this is quite a technical administrative process that we're having to go through here. So the variation before you today has a very specific purpose. While we were having to vary the agreement anyway, we looked at the agreement and we talked to the new operator and the old operator, and we realised that there was a number of commitments in that Schedule 9 agreement that were either now outdated or no longer deliverable. And so we've updated the agreement to remove those. So that means that the agreement is now clear, current, capable of being transferred, and it retains all the core benefits secured through the original competitive process. So in particular, it maintains the annual payment that funds the Social Inclusion Fund and ensures continuity of support for local initiatives, preserves key elements of the community benefit package. Once the variation is approved, the agreement then be novated to Mercer Casino Entertainment UK Limited. And this simply transfers the obligations from the current operator to the new one, ensuring a seamless regulatory transition. VGC Leeds will remain responsible for any matters arising before the data transfer, providing protection for the council. So we've worked closely with both the operators, the outgoing and the incoming operators, and the legal services to prepare the variation and novation in advance of the transaction. Subject to your approval today, we will then execute both documents under delegated authority to meet the required timescales. So in summary, the proposals maintain the integrity of the original commitment, support continuity of community benefits, and ensure that the agreement remains fit for purpose as the business moves to a new operator. So I ask you to note the background, consider and approve the proposed variations, and note the plan novation and implementation agreements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for officers? Councillor Martin.
Yes, thank you for that. And I know from previous papers that you've brought forward about gambling, about the harm that gambling has on people, children and families in our city. And I just wondered whether there's any and it's good to see Jo here because I know she works in financial inclusion. But is there any leeway for us as an authority in using this variation to lessen that harm? Thank you.
We would have to go into private session and discuss specific details of what's in the Schedule 9 agreement. But by updating it, we have strengthened some areas that will have an impact on the way that we deal with gambling harm in Leeds, but I really can't go into details in a public session. Yeah, our gambling harm work is separate from this process, and I think it's important that we keep it separate. We are very involved, and we are a leader on gambling harms work. So I think that's on the side. So.
Before we do go in a private session, I do welcome if there are any questions not related to the private session. Okay, if not, as members have indicated that they would like to discuss some issues in private, I now propose... Yep.
Sorry, Chair, I know I'm a bit of a pain.
So I now propose that the committee resolves to move into private session so members can consider matters which are likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information. Can someone propose that we go into a private session? And we got a seconder. Thank you very much. So those in favour of going in private session? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for waiting whilst we were in private session. So looking at the recommendations, which you can all see on page 63, could I have someone propose that we are supportive of those recommendations? We've got Councillor Ali to propose, and we got seconded by Councillor Martin. Right, can we vote on that, please, if we are supportive of those recommendations? Okay, that is passed. Just before we go on to the last agenda item, just to make you aware, I have checked that I can do this informally. So whilst it's not an agenda item, I think it's really important that we have an input on the work ahead. And so I would welcome any comments from members if there is anything in particular for licensing that they might want to see in a report further through the year. My own comments that I have made is, I know it's a little bit different now at Leeds Bradford Airport, but I had communications with both residents and members of our Hackney carriage drivers, and I was really concerned about the implications on disability access towards Leeds Bradford Airport. So in particular, they do a scheme with Arrows Taxi. Not many people are aware of that, and what that means is there is effectively two drop-offs. Now the drop-off that is effectively free is around a 5 or 10 minute walk. Now, if someone has a disability or have an impairment, I think that could be quite deeply unfair that someone with disability would effectively have to pay more money than everybody else because they're just not able to do that 10-minute walk. And more importantly, as we know, a lot of our Hackney carriage taxis are really equipped to support people with disabilities, and they're not able to go as close to the airport because of this deal with Arrows. And I do think we should absolutely have a response from Leeds Bradford Airport about that practice. Particularly, it seems to penalise some of our private hire taxi drivers, but equally I think there are clear implications on equality issues, especially with disability access. And I think it would be interesting to see what the rest of the country is doing, whether or not they are succeeding in getting more female taxi drivers into the trade. And I've spoken quite casually with other members on this, and actually when I use a private hire provider such as Uber, I do sometimes get female drivers, and I do think it would be worth looking into. And we often on the annual meeting do look at what breakdown we have of female drivers, but I think it'd be really interesting to see what is happening around the country and to see if there is any more success rates in getting female drivers. So I do welcome any comments if any members would like to see something in the ongoing year.
Yep, I agree with both of those suggestions. Thank you.
Councillor McCluskey.
As a regular user of Leeds Bradford, the mid-stay 10-minute free is an absolute nightmare if you've got a large gaze, and that's able-bodied, which I was up until recently. It is uneven, it is exposed to the weather and all the climatic conditions up there. So yes, I'd like to review that because it is very unfair.
Councillor Rogan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Just to echo and say thank you for sort of pointing out on the accessibility of taxis for people at Leeds Bradford Airport. I think, one of the ambitions we have for Leeds is resilient, and for people who have a disability, or whether it's a wheelchair or not being as mobile, it enables them to be more resilient. So thank you very much.
Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, just to say, we'll have a chance to discuss this, obviously, but it just seems to me it's a minority view, I think. But somebody who is going to the airport, and I do this often, and we always get the taxi driver to pay and drop us off right next to the terminal, as close as we can get. And it's a mental thing with some people, I think, that they're going to spend a weekend away or a week away and spend £1,000 or £2,000 on some kind of a break, or they're on business, in which case it's on expenses, but they won't pay £8 or £5 for drop-off, and it just seems to me just a mental block. However, we'll have a chance to discuss it.
Councillor Downs.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Obviously, the airport falls within my ward, and it would be interesting to see their response because they are a private company, and so whatever policies they adopt, are outside of the control of this council. But I think there are many things at the airport, and things like issues surrounding the climate and things like net zero and how they contribute to the city's ambitions. As a private company, we're in their hands, but I would very much welcome the discussion and give them the opportunity to change their policy around that. It's always been a big contention within my ward for various reasons, and the thing around sort of the limited free parking is that what people tend to do is they park up in my ward, get a taxi to come and pick them up from a street within my ward, and then take them to the airport so that they don't have to pay for the parking charge at the airport, but they then block people's drives, and it's an issue within my ward. So there's a wider issue, but this one I would certainly support the discussion with the airport on.
Obviously, I should just add a big caveat. There is absolutely no guarantee this could become as a report, but I thought it was really important that we do indicate any sort of concerns or issues that falls maybe within our remit. I'd like that.
I was just saying, yeah, that's fine for us to look at it, but also to invite them and hear what they have to say, you know. Yeah, the airport people, it's private, isn't it? We can make as many decisions as we want, but we need to also involve them, you know, ask them why they can't, can they change this, can they do that, you know. We can't just make decision and talk about things without involving them. But maybe not the first one. Maybe it should be just us with our suggestion and ideas, and then bring them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just speaking to the chair. We just need to make sure that what you're requesting as part of your future work programme doesn't cut across into what would be a scrutiny board remit. And I don't know enough about what you're thinking about right now to be able to advise, but certainly I think discussions between the chair and scrutiny board chairs might mean that what you're talking about might move to a scrutiny board arena rather than licensing committee. So just wanted to give that caveat to manage people's expectations on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. That's important. Councillor Edward.
Thank you. Yeah, I would support this item, although, like Councillor Downs, I'm not overly optimistic about what the airport might say from past experience. I would, I mean, another suggestion as well, and I don't know if this has been considered before, but I know that nationally, Guide Dogs UK and the RNIB and others have raised issues around the experience of visually impaired residents with guide dogs accessing taxis in particular, and I know informally I've had some representations on this, and even though there is quite clear guidance, the difference between the guidance and people's lived experiences is often considerable. So is that something that we could maybe consider?
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Can I bring in Jason?
Thank you, Chair. So, in relation to the wheelchair accessible vehicles and drop-offs, that's certainly something that I think we have in the past, generally, not just for WAVs, written to the airport and asked them for some clarity on the arrangements, given that Hackney Carriage in particular is a public service transport body. We can write again on your behalf, Chair. I'm quite happy to draft a letter on your behalf, setting out our concerns about that particular aspect in relation to wheelchair users and drop-offs, and we can try and obtain a response from the airport on that. There are equalities considerations, as you've quite rightly pointed out, so we'd be happy to do that. On the second point in relation to female drivers, I think that's a bit more of a complex one, because as a regulator we can't require sort of numbers. We can sort of discreetly encourage, and that's where we've been focused over the last few years, certainly. So, for example, we'll put on a specific bespoke training if there's groups of female drivers wanting to come forward. But I'm quite happy to have another discussion with you, Chair, and try to understand the aspirations there. But certainly on the first point in relation to wheelchair vehicles, we can write on your behalf as a first step, and then we can take it from there. Sorry, I didn't quite get your councillor's point. If you could repeat it.
Yes, of course, Jason. So the point was around the experience of visually impaired people, and particularly those with guide dogs. So there is a national campaign from Guide Dogs UK and other disability rights organisations, particularly around the experience of residents who have guide dogs and being refused service. And even though there are clear provisions in the law around this, it's still the experience of far too many residents with guide dogs, and I wonder if that's something that we could take up.
Once again, where complaints come to us as a regulator, they are dealt with, and we are very comprehensive in how we deal with refusal of fares, refusal of guide dogs, and there is strict guidance on what has to happen. And there is a bit of a grey area as well in terms of assistance dogs, but yeah, I'd be happy to sort of look at any specific questions or areas of focus that you want us to go away and perhaps consider some additional sort of resources towards in terms of enforcement and compliance. But as a regulator, once again, we're sort of constrained in terms of what we can and we can't do.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm speaking personally here, but I think I would like to hear more about the picture in Leeds, because nationally there is an issue with this. A lot of people who have assistance dogs have experienced this. When you look at some of the surveys that have been done, I think I'd like to know about the work that's being done in Leeds.
Councillor Edwards. Apologies to stop you, just as a clarification, because this is quite an informal situation. Yeah. This was more about bringing ideas towards licensing rather than going into a discussion on a specific topic. We just have to be really clear legally, okay? So thank you for your suggestion, Jason, about writing a letter. I think that's a really good first step. So we now will formally move to agenda item number 9, date and time of next committee meeting, which is Tuesday the 4th of August at 10 a.m. at the Civic Hall. That concludes the business of today's meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance and contributions. I now declare the meeting closed.